Before humans learned to name the stars, darkness was not empty. It was the hour when distance disappeared, when familiar ground became uncertain, and when a quiet sound could matter more than anything seen in daylight. We did not evolve as the strongest animal in the night. We evolved as a vulnerable body trying to survive inside it. And perhaps the deepest fear was never darkness itself, but the possibility that something else could see us better than we could see it. Why are humans still afraid of the dark, the predator we evolved to fear? Darkness was never the absence of light for early humans. It changed the shape of the world around the body. A path that looked clear in the afternoon could become uncertain after sunset. A tree, a stone, a hollow in the ground, or the edge of a river could lose its familiar outline. The same place was still there, but the human eye could no longer gather enough detail to trust it. This matters because the human story did not begin in sealed houses, behind locked doors, with lamps waiting beside the bed. It began in open landscapes, woodlands, caves, river edges, grasslands, and shelters never completely separate from the living world outside. For the first humans and their ancestors, night did not need to contain a monster to become dangerous. It only needed to remove information. In daylight, a human body can read distance, movement, surface, and direction with more confidence. At night, these ordinary tools weaken. The ground ahead becomes less certain. The edges of things soften. A sound can come from a place the eyes cannot confirm. This is why darkness could feel occupied even when nothing was visible. The mind was not inventing danger from nothing. It was responding to a real change in the information available. In the long beginning of human life, survival often depended on noticing small changes before they became close. A shape moving at the edge of sight, a branch breaking, a smell carried by the air, or a sudden silence nearby could all matter. But darkness narrowed the strongest channel humans used to understand the world. The eyes still worked, but they worked with poorer material. The body had to lean more heavily on hearing, touch, balance, memory, and caution. This did not make the night evil. It made the night incomplete, and incomplete knowledge is one of the oldest conditions the human nervous system had to face. The earliest human ancestors were not separate from other animals. They moved through ecosystems where many creatures also searched, rested, and fed. Some animals were active at night, some could smell better than humans, hear more finely, or move with less noise. It would be wrong to imagine every night as constant attack. But danger did not need to be constant to shape attention. A rare event can still matter deeply if the cost is high. When vision was limited, the safest response was often to slow down, listen longer, stay near others, and avoid unnecessary movement. This is the quiet logic that may still live inside human fear of the dark. It is not a simple belief that darkness itself is alive. It is bodily caution shaped by a world where not knowing could be costly. Modern people may walk into a dark hallway and feel a small tightening before reason catches up. The hallway is familiar. Yet for a moment, the body reacts to missing information before the thinking mind explains it away. That brief hesitation has a very old shape. It reaches back to a time when our lineage did not command the night, when seeing poorly could mean moving poorly, and when moving poorly could expose a fragile body to hazards it had not noticed. In that sense, darkness became an ancient test. It asked the human body to keep living while certainty was reduced. It turned ordinary space into a place of hidden edges, hidden holes, hidden animals, and hidden movement. The fear that followed was not always dramatic. Much of it may have been quiet, staying close to fire, keeping near the group, listening before stepping forward. This kind of fear would not need a story to exist. It could live as posture, attention, and restraint. That is why the fear of darkness feels so old even now. It comes from a beginning where the night was not empty, because emptiness itself could not be proven. The human body was never a perfect creature of the night. It could survive after sunset, but it did not own that world in the same way some other animals did. A person standing in darkness carries strength, memory, hands, language, and planning, yet the body itself remains soft-skinned, upright, and dependent on knowing what is nearby. Our teeth are not the teeth of a large cat. Our hands can make tools, but empty hands do not replace claws in a sudden encounter. Our legs can walk far, but they are not built for silent pursuit. This is one reason darkness could change the balance between humans and other living creatures. It did not make humans helpless, but it removed advantages that made humans effective in daylight. The long beginning of the human story was not spent above nature, looking down on it from safety. It was spent within nature, among animals with their own senses, roots, hunger, and resting places. In daylight, humans could use vision to read the open world. They could notice a slope, a track, a moving shape, or the warning behavior of other animals. They could see one another's faces and gestures. They could judge whether a place felt open enough to cross or sheltered enough to rest. When darkness arrived, these ordinary judgments became slower. The body still had the same bones and muscles, but it had less certainty about where to place them. That loss mattered because many predators do not need human-style sight to be dangerous. Some rely on smell. Some detect movement with little light. Some hear faint sounds that humans miss. Some move low to the ground, with bodies shaped for patience and sudden force. Humans, by contrast, are noisy in dry leaves, visible when standing upright, and vulnerable when surprised at close range. It would be false to say our ancestors lived every night under attack, but it is reasonable to say that night made surprise easier, and surprise was dangerous for a species whose best defenses often depended on seeing early, warning others, and acting together. The fear of darkness can be understood through this difference. It is not that darkness itself was a predator. It is that darkness could give more power to things already adapted to move through it. A large nocturnal hunter did not need to be everywhere. It only needed to be possible. The human nervous system, shaped over deep time, could not afford to wait for certainty before becoming careful. If a sound in the dark was only a branch, caution cost little. If it was movement from an animal, delay could cost much more. This uneven cost is why a small signal in the night can feel large. The body is not calmly calculating evidence like a scientist. It is preserving a pattern that once favored staying alive until morning. Early humans also carried another weakness into the night: sleep. Every animal that sleeps must accept reduced awareness. For humans, sleep made the group important, because one body alone cannot watch every direction while resting. But even in a group, each sleeping person became temporarily dependent on others, on shelter, on fire, and on the surrounding quiet. Darkness and sleep met at the same vulnerable edge. The eyes closed or saw poorly, the body lay down. The world continued moving. This link between night and vulnerability may explain why darkness can still feel different from ordinary uncertainty. It touches an older layer of human life. When the night asked the body to trust protection it could not fully verify. Modern rooms hide this ancient setting beneath walls and electric light, yet the body has not been rebuilt from the ground up. A dark room does not contain the same risks as a prehistoric landscape, but the first response may still rise from an older rule. When vision falls, do not assume safety. Fear of the dark is often misunderstood as if it were a childish belief, something invented by imagination after reason has gone quiet. A calmer way to see it is to begin with the body. A body does not need a story before it becomes cautious. It needs a situation where the senses are weaker than possible danger. For early humans, darkness was exactly that kind of situation. It reduced vision, blurred distance, hid edges, and made movement harder to judge. In such a world, fear did not have to be loud. It could be a pause before stepping forward, a decision to stay near others, or a reluctance to wander away from firelight. These responses look simple, but they carry a deep logic. They belong to a species that began not as a master of the night, but as a daylight animal learning how to remain alive when daylight ended. The earliest human ancestors did not need to understand evolution, predators, or the nervous system for caution to be useful. A body that hesitated near uncertain darkness could avoid a fall, a hidden animal, a crossing, or a place where escape was difficult. Sometimes the fear would be wrong. A shadow might only be a branch. A sound might only be wind moving through dry grass. But the cost of being wrong in that direction was usually small. The cost of being wrong in the other direction could be greater. This is why fear can survive even when it makes mistakes. Natural selection does not favor a perfectly calm mind in every situation. It favors patterns that, across many generations, help living bodies continue long enough to eat, sleep, protect children, and return to the group. In that sense, fear of darkness may be less like superstition and more like an old form of risk management. It is not proof that danger is present. It is a signal that information is missing. This distinction matters. If darkness always meant danger, the fear would be a false conclusion. But if darkness meant less knowledge, then caution becomes understandable. The human mind can be afraid not only of what is known, but of what cannot be checked. In the deep beginning of human life, the unseen had practical weight. A hidden edge could break a bone. A hidden animal could approach before being noticed. A hidden separation from the group could become real vulnerability. The world did not become supernatural because the sun went down. It became harder to read. Over time, that difficulty could become linked with feeling. The body learned that night required care. Modern life can make this seem strange. A person may stand in a safe room, aware that the door is locked and the floor is familiar, and still feel quiet pressure when the light is gone. This does not mean the person believes in danger. It may mean the older body is reacting before the newer mind finishes explaining. The brain receives less visual information and treats the space as less certain. The room has not changed, but the evidence available to the senses has changed. That difference is enough to awaken an ancient response. This is why calling fear of the dark irrational may be too simple. It is often outdated, but not meaningless. It comes from a long inheritance in which caution at night was woven into movement, rest, shelter, and attention. Our ancestors survived not because they were never afraid, but because fear could guide them away from risk. The fear that remains in us now is not a perfect guide. It can misread a hallway, a quiet house, or the shape of a coat in the corner. Yet behind those mistakes is a serious history. Darkness once marked the place where human certainty became thin, and where the body learned to ask for light, company, and time before trusting the world. Human beings are strongly guided by daylight because the eyes give the body its clearest map of the world. In bright conditions, the human eye can separate edges, colors, faces, gestures, tracks, slopes, and small movements with remarkable usefulness. This does not mean humans have the best vision among animals in every way. It means vision became one of the main ways our lineage organizes space. A person can decide where to step, how far away another body is, whether a branch is still or moving, whether a path is open or blocked, and whether another face looks calm or alarmed. In the long beginning of human life, this visual map mattered every day. Our ancestors moved through landscapes where food, shelter, water, tools, children, companions, and danger all had to be located in space. Daylight helped turn the world into something readable. It gave distance a shape. It gave the ground a surface. It allowed the group to coordinate with eyes as well as voices. When night arrived, the same body did not become useless, but its strongest guide became weaker. The eye still receives light in darkness, but far less detail can be trusted. Colors fade first, edges become softer, depth becomes harder to judge. A familiar object can lose its identity and become only a shape. This matters because darkness directly interferes with the sense humans most often use to confirm reality at a distance. Hearing can tell us that something happened, but it may not tell us exactly what it was. Touch can confirm a surface, but only when the body is already close to it. Smell may carry clues, but it is slower and less precise for most human decisions. Vision, especially in daylight, lets the body know before it arrives. It gives warning while there is still room to change direction. For early humans, that room could matter. If a person saw uneven ground, dense brush, an animal trail, or movement ahead, the group could slow down, turn aside, call softly, or wait. In darkness, warning often came later. The body had to move with less confidence, and less confidence is one root of fear. Our eyes also shape social safety. In daylight, humans read one another constantly. A glance can show where someone is looking. A face can signal concern. A hand movement can tell a child to stay close. These small signals helped groups act together long before modern speech filled every silence. At night, faces become harder to see. Gestures disappear unless bodies are close. The group is still present, but its coordination depends more on sound, memory, and position. This connects fear of darkness not only with predators, but with the older human need to remain linked to others. A person who cannot clearly see the group may feel the boundary of safety becoming thinner. The body is not making a philosophical judgment. It is responding to a change in access. The daylight world gives the nervous system more evidence. The night world gives it less. Modern lighting hides how recent that difference has become in daily life. Today, a person may press a switch and restore a room instantly. But for almost all of human history, darkness was not so easily removed. Fire helped, moonlight helped, stars helped, and dawn always returned. Yet none of these gave the steady reach of daylight. The human eye was shaped within that rhythm. It learned to use the sunlit world with power, and to treat the unlit world with care. This is why darkness can still feel like a narrowing of the world. The room may be safe, the walls may be strong, and the mind may know there is nothing waiting there. But when sight loses detail, the body briefly returns to an older condition: fewer edges, less distance, weaker certainty. Fear begins quietly where the map of daylight fades. When vision weakens, the body does not become silent. It begins to listen in other ways. The ears attend more closely. The skin notices cool air, a touch of movement, the weight of clothing, the small shift of a floor or branch underfoot. Balance becomes more important because every step has to be checked without a clear picture ahead. Breathing may grow quieter. The muscles may hold a little tension, not because a person has chosen fear, but because the nervous system is preparing for uncertainty. This is one of the old truths behind human fear of darkness. Night does not remove all knowledge. It changes the channels through which knowledge arrives. In the long beginning of human life, when our ancestors moved through open ground, trees, stone shelters, river edges, and sleeping places shared with other living creatures, the body had to continue reading the world after the eyes lost strength. Hearing became a wider circle. A sound could come from beyond the reach of sight. A footstep, a wing beat, a branch, water, insects, or another human body moving nearby could all enter attention before anything was seen. But hearing is different from vision. It can alert the body quickly, yet it often leaves the mind unsure. A sound may reveal direction poorly. It may be changed by wind, rock, leaves, water, or distance. It can tell the body that something happened while withholding what that something is. This makes the night feel mentally unfinished. The ear opens the question, but the eye cannot always close it. Skin also becomes part of the night. Human skin is not only a covering, it is a field of small signals. It notices temperature, pressure, insects, moisture, and the faint movement of air. In darkness, these signals can seem larger because fewer visual details compete with them. A brush against the arm may be understood first as contact before reason explains it. A cold draft may mark an opening, a cave mouth, a gap in shelter, or simply changing air. For early humans, such bodily signals were not decorative. They helped locate the body within its surroundings when the surroundings were harder to see. The body asks simple questions without words. Is there space behind me? Is something close? Is the ground firm? Is the group near? These questions belong to survival long before they belong to imagination. The heart and breath also respond to darkness through the larger system that prepares the body for action. This does not mean every fear in darkness is useful or accurate. It means the body has ways of increasing readiness when information becomes poor. A slight rise in alertness could help a person pause, listen, and avoid careless movement. It could also make harmless things feel more important than they are. That tension is part of being human. The same system that may overreact in a safe bedroom may once have helped a vulnerable body stay careful near uncertain ground or unseen movement. Our lineage did not begin with electric walls, steady lamps, and smooth floors. It began with bodies that had to sleep, wake, gather, carry children, and move through places where the night was real space, not just a darkened room. So when darkness falls, the body borrows from older tools. It listens for pattern. It feels for nearness. It holds the muscles ready. It lets the heart speak before thought has finished its explanation. The modern mind may know there is no predator in the hallway, no animal beyond the doorway, no hidden drop under the foot. Yet the older body still treats reduced sight as a reason to gather more signals. Fear, in this sense, is not only an emotion, it is a whole-body search for missing information, shaped by nights when listening carefully could help a human being remain alive until dawn. A small sound in darkness can feel larger than the same sound in daylight, because the mind cannot easily finish the picture. During the day, a crack in the grass may be paired with a visible bird, a falling twig, or the foot of a companion. The eye supplies an answer quickly, and the body can relax or respond with proportion. At night, the sound arrives alone. It enters the ear without a clear shape beside it. A scrape, a rustle, or a soft knock against wood becomes a question suspended in the air. The human nervous system does not like questions left open near the body. This is especially true when the question concerns movement. Movement suggests that something else is present, and presence matters deeply to a species that began in shared landscapes with animals, children, elders, tools, shelters, food, and danger all close enough to affect survival. The sound itself may be harmless, but the uncertainty around it can give it weight. Early humans did not live in a world where every night sound meant a predator. That would be too simple, and it would not be true. Most sounds in natural darkness come from ordinary life: wind, insects, branches, small animals, water, shifting ground, sleeping companions, but the body did not need every sound to be dangerous. It only needed some sounds to matter enough that ignoring them could be costly. In daylight, a human could compare hearing with sight. In darkness, that comparison became weaker. The mind had to hold several possibilities at once. It might be nothing. It might be a small animal. It might be another human nearby. It might be something larger, closer, or hidden by the land. This is why the night can make attention narrow and sharpen. The body waits for a second signal, a direction, a pattern, a repetition. A single rustle may be dismissed. A second one may change posture. A third may move the hand, lift the head, or draw the body closer to others. This slow chain of attention belongs to the old human beginning, when survival often depended on noticing change before it arrived fully. Sound is powerful because it crosses distance without showing its source. It can move around stone, through leaves, along water, and across open ground. It can be distorted by echo or swallowed by soft earth. A predator, a harmless animal, and the wind can sometimes borrow similar noises. The brain must make an estimate before it has proof. It is not trying to create fear for no reason. It is trying to choose a safe response while evidence is incomplete. This is one reason fear of darkness feels different from ordinary worry. It is not built from a clear object, but from the gap between signal and certainty. The old body hears something, cannot see enough, and prepares for the possibility that the world has changed. In modern life, this pattern remains visible in quiet rooms. A house may settle at night, pipes may shift, a curtain may move, a small object may fall after being poorly balanced. The thinking mind can explain these things, but often only after the body has already reacted. The shoulders tighten first. The breath pauses first. The eyes turn toward the sound, searching for an outline. This order matters. The body responds to the loss of certainty before language gives it a calm name. Long before cities and electric light, this early response may have helped a person avoid careless sleep, careless movement, or separation from the group. It was not perfect. It was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to keep the body aware when vision could not be trusted. So a small sound in the dark can still become important, because it awakens an ancient rule. When the world cannot be seen clearly, listen as if the unseen may matter. Predators were not background decorations in the human world. They were part of the same landscapes where our ancestors searched for food, rested, raised children, crossed water, and learned the habits of places. To understand why darkness could matter so much, we have to remember that early humans did not begin as creatures standing safely outside the food web. They lived among other animals, and some of those animals were strong enough, fast enough, or patient enough to make a human body vulnerable. Large cats, hyenas, wolves, bears, crocodiles, snakes, and other dangerous animals were not all present in every place or every time, and their relationships with humans differed across regions. But the wider truth is steady. Human beings evolved in ecosystems where other living bodies could injure, kill, or compete with them. The night did not create that reality. It made parts of that reality harder to see. This matters because fear of darkness is not only about imagination. It is connected to an older setting in which humans shared space with animals whose senses and bodies were often shaped for very different forms of survival. A large cat may move with controlled silence. A hyena may follow smell and sound over distance. A crocodile may wait near water with almost no visible movement. A snake may become part of the ground until it is too close. None of these examples means that every human group lived under constant threat from every predator. That would be a false picture. The more careful picture is quieter. Over long time, across many environments, danger from animals was real enough that caution had value. Our ancestors did not need to meet a predator every night for the possibility to shape behavior. A single dangerous encounter could leave deep marks on a family, a group, or a place remembered by movement and habit. The human beginning was built inside this living pressure. Humans had advantages, but those advantages worked best when they could be organized. Hands could carry tools. Voices could warn others. Memory could mark unsafe places. Groups could watch in several directions. Fire could create a boundary of light and heat. But these advantages were less complete when vision fell, when people were tired, when children slept, when the edge of camp blurred into trees or grass. Darkness could move humans closer to the conditions where many predators were strongest: surprise, concealment, and short distance. The predator did not have to be seen clearly to affect the human body. It only had to be possible in the darkened world nearby. This is one reason the fear can feel older than thought. It does not begin with an image of a named animal. It begins with the sense that something living may be present beyond the limit of sight. Archaeology and paleontology support the general idea that ancient humans and earlier human relatives sometimes suffered from carnivores, though the evidence is uneven and must be handled carefully. Bones can show bite marks, tooth damage, or patterns of accumulation in caves, but each case needs cautious interpretation. Still, the broader ecological picture is not doubtful. Humans were not always the dominant force in every landscape they entered. They were adaptable, social, and intelligent, yet still made of flesh. A human child, an injured adult, a sleeping person, or someone walking alone at dusk was not protected by intelligence in the abstract. Protection had to become behavior: stay near others, listen, avoid uncertain movement, respect water edges, keep light close, remember where animals travel. These habits make sense in a world where predators were part of ordinary ecology. And when modern people feel uneasy in darkness, the feeling may be carrying a faint echo of that world, not a certainty that something is there, but an inherited respect for the moments when the living landscape can no longer be read clearly. The traces left in bone and stone do not tell a simple story of humans always winning. They show something quieter and more useful for this question. Early humans and earlier human relatives lived inside landscapes where danger could move both ways. Sometimes humans hunted, sometimes they scavenged, sometimes they were watched, followed, bitten, or carried by other animals. The record is incomplete, and it would be dishonest to turn every damaged bone into a dramatic attack. Bones break after burial. Caves gather, remains in many ways. Water, falling rocks, weather, and later animals can change what we see. But when researchers find tooth marks, punctures, patterns of chewing, or accumulations of bones in places used by carnivores, they remind us that human beings were not born outside the web of risk. The deep beginning of our lineage was not a clean road toward control. It was a long negotiation with environments where other animals had power too. This matters for fear of darkness because the night made evidence harder to collect while the body was still exposed to the same world. Archaeological traces do not need to prove that ancient people lived in constant terror. They only need to show that contact with predators was part of the human setting. Some fossil sites connected with early human relatives include signs that carnivores played a role in how bones were damaged or gathered. At other sites, humans appear as tool users, fire users, hunters, or careful occupants of shelter. These two pictures do not cancel each other. They belong together. A species can be intelligent and still vulnerable. A group can make tools and still avoid certain places after sunset. A person can understand a landscape by daylight and still lose confidence when that same landscape turns dark. The evidence from the ground gives us a balanced picture. Humans were neither helpless prey nor untouchable masters. They were animals with unusual minds and fragile bodies, living among animals with claws, teeth, speed, strength, venom, patience, or better night senses. Even the places humans chose can tell us something. Shelters, caves, rock overhangs, elevated ground, and areas near fire were not just scenic backdrops. They could help organize safety. They placed bodies together. They limited directions from which danger might approach. They made it easier to watch, hear, and respond. But caves and shelters were also used by other animals in many periods, so they were not automatically safe. A useful place for humans could also be useful for predators. This is one reason the line between refuge and risk was never absolute. In the long human beginning, safety had to be made again and again by attention, group behavior, timing, memory, and light. Darkness disturbed that work because it reduced the signs by which people judged whether a place was truly clear. Ecology gives another layer to the same idea. Predators do not need to appear often to shape behavior. A water edge where crocodiles might wait, a thicket where a large cat could hide, a cave with old animal scent, or open ground crossed at the wrong hour could all become part of learned caution. The human nervous system did not preserve a museum of exact events. It preserved tendencies. Pause when information falls, listen when sight weakens, stay near others when the edges of space become uncertain. Modern people may not know these ancient landscapes directly, yet the body still reacts to the same basic condition. Darkness removes confirmation. It makes ordinary space harder to read. The bones and places left behind do not say that night was always filled with predators. They say something more careful and more believable. Humans evolved in a world where predators were real enough, and human certainty was limited enough. That darkness deserved respect. Darkness changed the balance between humans and predators because it changed the value of each body's strengths. In daylight, humans could use distance. They could see a moving shape before it came close, judge whether it was approaching, call to others, lift a tool, gather children, or move toward a safer place. Vision gave time, and time allowed the human advantage to unfold. Our strength was rarely in the body alone. It was in shared attention, memory, planning, hands, voices, and the ability to act together. But when night reduced distance and detail, those advantages had less room to work. A predator that depended on concealment, smell, hearing, patience, or sudden movement did not need to defeat human intelligence in the open. It only needed to shorten the distance before humans understood what was happening. This is why darkness could be so important in the deep beginning of human life. It did not make every predator stronger in every way, but it could make surprise easier, and surprise was one of the oldest dangers for a fragile, upright animal. A human standing alone in poor light is still human, still thinking, still capable of action, yet the body must act with less information. The ground may hide a hole, brush may hide movement, a riverbank may hide a waiting animal, a cave mouth may hold old scent or recent tracks the eye cannot read. Even a familiar shelter becomes less certain at its edges. In daylight, the edge between known and unknown can be placed farther away. In darkness, that edge moves closer to the skin. For early humans and earlier relatives, this shrinking of safe distance mattered. The body could not wait until danger was fully visible, because full visibility might arrive too late. Caution, therefore, had to begin before proof. This does not mean humans were passive victims of the night. They answered darkness with group life, fire, tools, memory, and habit. They learned to avoid some places at some times, to remain close, to listen, to keep children within reach, and to treat the outer ring of light as a boundary. These behaviors show that humans did not simply fear darkness, they managed it. But management is not the same as erasing risk. Fire may push animals away, but fire also creates a circle beyond which vision falls again. A group may hear more than one person, but a tired group still cannot watch everything. Tools help only when hands are awake and danger is recognized in time. The night pressed on the exact weakness that human defenses needed most: early information. Predators, by contrast, often rely on the power of late information. They benefit when the other animal notices too slowly. A stalking animal, a silent movement through grass, a waiting body near water, or an approach hidden by land can turn darkness into cover. It would be careless to claim that one single predator shaped all human fear of night. Human evolution unfolded across many environments, with different animals, climates, shelters, and histories. But the repeated condition was clear enough. There were times when humans could not see well, while other dangers still existed. Over generations, the body that treated that condition lightly may have taken greater risks. The body that paused, stayed near the group, and listened longer may have carried a small advantage. This is the quiet evolutionary meaning behind the fear. Darkness shifted the contest from what humans do best toward what hidden danger can do well. It took away the long view, narrowed the safe distance, and made the unseen feel close enough to matter, even before any shape appeared. In that older world, fear was not a final answer about the dark. It was a request from the body for more time, more light, more companions, and more certainty before stepping beyond what could be known. Fear is often treated as a failure of calm thinking, but in the older human world it was one of the ways the body stayed connected to danger before danger became certain. A warning system does not need to be pleasant to be useful. It only needs to interrupt the body soon enough to change what happens next. In darkness, this interruption could matter. A person who paused before walking away from the group, listened before crossing uncertain ground, or waited before entering thick cover, was not solving a mystery with reason. The body was creating a small delay, and sometimes a small delay is the difference between moving safely and moving blindly. This is the first reason fear helped the living stay alive. It gave the human body time. In the long beginning of human life, our ancestors did not move through the world as separate minds floating above the ground. They were bodies with limits, eyes that weakened after sunset, skin that could be cut, bones that could break, children who needed protection, and sleep that made everyone less aware. Fear belonged to this physical reality. It tightened attention. It changed posture. It made the ears search for repetition. It made the body turn towards sound, toward the group, toward light, or away from uncertain edges. None of this required the fear to be perfectly accurate. It only required the fear to be useful often enough, across many generations, that careless movement became less likely. A calm body in the wrong moment could be in greater danger than an anxious body that stepped more slowly. This is why fear should not be understood as the opposite of intelligence. In many situations, fear works before intelligence has enough information. The thinking mind may need shape, distance, cause, and proof. The warning system works with less. A sound, a shadow, a sudden stillness, a feeling that the familiar place is no longer fully readable. In daylight, these signals can be checked quickly. At night, the checking is slower, so the first response becomes more important. The body asks for caution before the mind has reached a conclusion. For early humans, this could protect against predators, but also against other hazards of darkness: falling, losing the path, stepping into water, walking into thorns, disturbing animals, or becoming separated from others. The fear of darkness was therefore not only fear of teeth or claws, it was fear shaped by a whole environment where missing information could touch the body in many ways. The oldest human world did not punish every mistake, but it did not forgive all mistakes either. This makes fear a kind of biological attention. It pulls the mind toward what might matter. It narrows the field. It may make a harmless sound feel too large, but it also prevents the body from treating every sound as meaningless. That balance is imperfect, and it has always been imperfect. A warning system that waits until danger is fully visible may warn too late. A warning system that responds too often may create discomfort, but discomfort is not the same as failure. In a dark landscape, the safer error may have been to take the unknown seriously for a little while. This is why the modern fear of darkness can feel unreasonable and still have an understandable origin. A person in a quiet room may know the walls are secure and the floor is clear, yet the body reacts when the lights go out. It is not reading the room alone. It is reading a very old condition. Vision has fallen, space has become less certain, and the world must be checked through weaker signals. the fear does not prove that danger exists. It proves that the body was built from a history in which caution could protect life. Long before darkness became a simple absence inside a house, it was a situation that asked the human nervous system to wake slightly, listen carefully, and keep the living close to safety. A warning system becomes easier to understand when we look at the cost of two different mistakes. In darkness, a human body could hear a sound and react as if it mattered, even when it was only wind, insects, a branch, or another person shifting in sleep. That kind of mistake could be uncomfortable. It could interrupt rest, tighten the muscles, or make someone pause longer than necessary. But usually it did not destroy the body. The opposite mistake was different. If a sound in the dark came from danger and the body ignored it completely, the cost could be far greater. This unequal cost is one of the quiet reasons fear may have stayed with us. The nervous system does not need perfect accuracy to be useful. It needs to reduce the chances of the worst errors when the world cannot be checked clearly. In the long beginning of human life, our ancestors did not have full information at night. They could not turn on a light, scan every corner, and remove uncertainty in a moment. They had to choose behavior while still unsure. A rustle might be harmless. A shape might be empty. A silence might mean nothing at all. But the body had to act before certainty arrived, because certainty can arrive too late when distance is short and vision is poor. This creates a simple pattern. It is safer to pause many times for nothing than to fail once when something real is close. That does not mean early humans lived in constant panic. More likely, caution became woven into ordinary habits. Sleeping near others, keeping fire close, listening before moving, avoiding unknown ground after sunset, and treating the dark edge of shelter with respect. Fear worked not as a dramatic event, but as a small adjustment in behavior. This principle also explains why fear can seem excessive in modern life. A person may know that a dark room is safe, but a sudden sound still reaches the body before reason finishes its reply. The body is using an older rule that was shaped under poorer conditions. When information is missing, prepare first and explain later. That rule is not always needed today, but it is not meaningless. It belongs to a world where delay, distance, and early warning mattered deeply. For early humans and earlier relatives, the body was not protected by knowledge alone. Knowledge had to become action at the right time. A warning that came after the animal was already close, after the foot had already slipped, or after the child had already wandered away was less useful than a warning that came too early. Fear often comes too early. That is part of its design. It reaches toward possibility before evidence becomes complete. In darkness, possibility grows because the eyes cannot close the question. The mind fills the gap with caution, not because it knows the answer, but because the cost of not caring can be higher than the cost of caring too much for a moment. Across generations, this kind of pattern could leave a trace in human feeling. Bodies that ignored uncertain night signals too easily may have taken more risks. Bodies that reacted to every signal with total panic would also have wasted energy and disturbed rest. The useful response was likely somewhere between those extremes. Enough fear to slow movement, enough calm to keep living. This balanced caution fits the sleep audio truth of the subject. Fear of darkness is not a claim that every shadow hides danger. It is the memory of a world where shadow removed proof. It teaches us that the human body is not built only for what is true in the present room. It also carries older habits from nights when a false alarm was often cheaper than a missed warning. Across many generations, caution can become more than a momentary feeling. It can become a pattern that quietly favors some lives over others. This does not mean fear of darkness was passed down as a clear memory, as if one ancient night were stored inside every modern mind. Evolution does not work that way. What can be favored are tendencies. To notice uncertainty, to pause when sight is weak, to stay near others, to treat hidden movement as important until it is understood. If those tendencies helped some people survive long enough to care for children and remain within the group, then caution could become part of the human inheritance. The first humans and their relatives did not need to be fearless to succeed. They needed to be alive in the morning often enough for children to grow. In a world without electric light, that fact carried weight. A person who ignored darkness may have saved energy, but also may have stepped into danger more easily. A person frozen by fear could not gather food, protect others, or sleep well. The useful pattern likely lived between those extremes. It was not panic, it was watchfulness. It was the body saying, "Move slowly now. Listen longer now. Keep the young close now. Do not leave shelter without reason now." These decisions could shape life across seasons and generations. Natural selection often works through small differences repeated many times. One group may choose a safer sleeping place. One parent may wake at a faint sound. One child may be kept close to the fire instead of wandering toward the dark edge. One tired person may decide not to cross rough ground after sunset. Most of these moments would leave no fossil, no tool, and no story. Yet moments like these can still matter in the long human beginning. The past that shaped the body was not only made of great hunts, migrations, and inventions. It was also made of nights survived quietly. This helps explain why fear of darkness can remain after the original dangers have changed. Modern humans inherit bodies built by people who lived before modern safety. Those people did not survive because they always knew exactly what was waiting beyond sight. They survived, partly because they could behave carefully without knowing. That is different from superstition. It is a response to limited information. Darkness made the world less readable, and less readable worlds rewarded attention. Over time, attention linked with emotion. The feeling made the behavior stronger. A person did not need to recite a reason for staying close to others. Unease itself could make closeness more likely. The feeling guided movement before explanation appeared. Across generations, such patterns may have protected the young most of all. Children are smaller, slower, less experienced, and more likely to misunderstand risk. A child who disliked being alone in the dark might remain near adults. An adult who became uneasy when a child moved toward darkness might call them back sooner. This does not prove one cause for every modern fear. Human fear has many layers: learning, culture, personal experience, sleep, imagination, and the brain's response to missing information. But the evolutionary layer gives the feeling a calm explanation. Fear did not need to be perfectly accurate to be useful. It only needed to lean the living body towards safer behavior often enough. Today, when a person feels uneasy in a dark hallway, that feeling may be misplaced in the present, but it is not empty in origin. It belongs to bodies that treated night as a time for closeness, restraint, and careful attention. The cautious ones did not always survive, and the bold ones did not always die. Human history is never that simple. But over deep time, the tendency to respect darkness may have helped enough lives continue that a trace of it still rises in us when light disappears. Fire did not remove night, but it changed the human relationship with it. Before steady lamps, streetlights, and walls, fire gave people a small circle in which darkness could be pushed back. Inside that circle, faces could be seen again. Hands could work. Children could be gathered close. The ground near the flames could be read with more confidence. A sound beyond the light still mattered, but now there was a centre, a place where the group could return their attention and bodies. This was one of the great changes in the long human beginning. Fire gave warmth, helped with food, shaped tools and social life, and offered a visible boundary between the known and the unknown. For a species whose strongest sense weakens after sunset, that boundary mattered. It did not make humans rulers of the night. It made a small area of night more human. The glow of fire turned space into layers. Nearest to the flames, the world was clear enough for eyes to work. A little farther away, shapes softened. Beyond that, the darkness remained. This layered space may be one reason fire became so important to rest. It did not simply make light. It organized attention. People could sit with their backs nearer one another. They could notice who was present. They could see tools, food, embers, smoke, and movement near the camp. Fire also made sound feel different, because the eye could confirm more of the nearby world. A crackle from the flame, a shifting body, or a branch close to camp could be placed within a visible scene. The unknown was not gone, but it was moved outward. In the older human world, moving the unknown outward may have been a powerful form of safety. Fire also changed the body's feeling of night, because it created a signal that other animals could notice. Many animals avoid flame, heat, smoke, and the activity of grouped humans. This does not mean fire was a perfect shield, and it would be wrong to describe it as magic protection. A hungry or curious animal might still approach. Wind, rain, poor fuel, exhaustion, and carelessness could weaken the flame. But even an imperfect boundary can change behavior. Light and smoke could make a human sleeping place less like an unmarked patch of darkness. The fire said, "There are bodies here. There is heat here. There is movement here." For early humans, that signal may have helped turn the night from open exposure into a more managed environment. The human body still remained soft, tired, and dependent on others, but fire gave the group a tool that reached beyond the skin. It extended human presence into darkness. Around fire, the social side of humanity also became more visible. People could see gestures, expressions, and positions after sunset. They could share warmth. They could remain awake together. They could keep children close without losing sight of them. The circle of light supported the group as much as the individual. This connects directly to why darkness still affects us. Human safety was rarely built from one body alone. It came from shared attention, and fire helped shared attention continue after daylight ended. A person near a flame was not only seeing better, they were being seen by others. Their presence was confirmed. Their place in the group was easier to maintain. The fear of darkness may have weakened inside that glow, because the body received more information: faces, hands, ground, smoke, sparks, and the nearness of companions. Yet the fire also revealed the limit of human control. Every circle of light has an edge. Beyond it, the old condition returned. The eyes weakened again. Sound became less certain again. The living world continued beyond the glow. This is why fire changed the night without erasing the fear of it. It gave humans a center, but not complete command. It created a warm island in a larger sea of darkness, and the body could rest more easily inside that island while still listening to what moved beyond it. Firelight made a circle, but the circle always ended. That edge is important. Inside the glow, the human eye could recover some of its old confidence. A face had shape again. A hand could find a tool. A child could be seen before wandering too far. The ground near the flames could be searched for stones, roots, insects, or holes. But beyond the reach of the fire, darkness did not disappear. It waited at the boundary, not as an enemy with a single form, but as a zone where information thinned again. For early humans, this boundary may have been one of the most important places in the night. It showed both the power and the limit of human control. The fire made a center, yet the world outside that center remained larger than the light. In the long beginning of human life, this must have mattered deeply. Our ancestors did not live inside sealed rooms where darkness was only a visual condition. They lived in landscapes that continued moving after sunset. Wind crossed open ground. Small animals searched for food. Larger animals followed paths, smells, water, or prey. Trees shifted. Insects sounded. Companions slept and turned. Fire brought order to the nearest space, but it could not make the whole landscape readable. The edge of the glow became the place where certainty faded. A shape could appear and vanish. A sound could come from beyond sight. A pair of eyes might reflect light for a moment, or nothing might be there at all. The body still had to decide how seriously to treat the unknown. This is why fire did not cancel fear. It changed fear into watchfulness at the border. Human beings could gather closer to the warmth, but closeness itself showed that the outside still mattered. A group around a fire may have felt safer, because the flame made people visible to one another. Yet the same flame also made the darkness beyond seem deeper by contrast. The brighter the center, the more hidden the outer ring could feel. This is a simple visual fact, but it carries an older emotional meaning. When the eye adjusts to firelight, the unlit space beyond the glow becomes harder to read. A person looking outward may see little except movement, shadow, or blackness. The fire helps nearby life, but it may sharpen the sense that something could exist just outside the known. This does not mean early humans imagined constant danger. It means the boundary between seen and unseen became easier to feel. The body could rest, speak, and warm itself, while still holding some attention toward the place where light failed. Fire also required care. It had to be fed, protected from weather, and kept from dying. If it weakened, the circle shrank. If fuel ran low, the night came closer. This made light dependent on labour, memory, and group rhythm. Someone had to gather wood. Someone had to notice the embers. Someone had to understand wind and dampness. Safety was not a permanent possession. It was maintained. That lesson belongs directly to human origins. Early human life was not shaped by one invention that solved night forever. It was shaped by repeated acts that made night more manageable for a while. Fire made darkness negotiable, not defeated. Modern darkness can still carry a faint echo of that outer ring. A lamp on a bedside table lights the room, but a dark doorway may still draw attention. A campfire today can feel peaceful, yet the forest beyond it can feel unknown. The feeling is not always dramatic fear. It may be a quiet awareness of the edge. Here is what I can see, and there is what I cannot. Long ago, that difference mattered to bodies trying to sleep among living things. Fire gave humans their first great answers to night, but outside the answer, the question remained. Fire helped humans push back against the night, but it could not erase the deeper condition that made night powerful. The flame changed the nearest space. It gave warmth, light, smoke, and a centre for the group. It made hands useful after sunset and allowed faces to remain visible when the sun was gone. Yet the human body still knew that the light was limited. Beyond the glow, vision weakened again. Beyond the smoke, smells and movements belonged to the wider world. Beyond the circle, the old uncertainty remained. This is why fire can be understood not as the end of fear, but as one of the first ways humans learn to live beside fear without being ruled by it. In the long beginning of human life, this was a major step. Our ancestors did not have to make the whole night safe in order to survive it. They only had to create enough safety, long enough for sleep, rest, care, and memory to continue. Fire turned darkness from a single surrounding field into a divided world. There was the lit place where people gathered, and there was the unlit place where the land continued beyond human certainty. This division helped the body. It gave a place to sit, a place to return to, a place where the eyes could confirm the group. But it also reminded the body that safety had an edge. A person could look from the warm centre into the outer dark and feel both comfort and alertness at once. That mixed feeling may be close to the ancient emotional truth of fire. It soothed the fear of darkness, but it also gave that fear a boundary to watch. A flame does not say that nothing is outside. It says that here, for now, the group has made a small order inside a larger unknown. This matters because human survival was rarely built on total control. It was built on partial control, used carefully. Fire could discourage many animals, but not all animals in every situation. It could reveal nearby movement, but not distant movement. It could help people remain awake, but tired bodies still needed sleep. It could hold the group together, but someone still had to tend it, feed it, and notice when it weakened. The fear of night, therefore, did not vanish because the practical problem did not vanish. The human body still had to ask where the light ended, where children were, where the path lay, whether the weather would change, and whether the sounds beyond the glow were ordinary or worth attention. These questions belong to a species that began with intelligence, but also with limits. Fire expanded human possibility without removing human vulnerability. Modern life often hides this balance. We may think of light as something instant and complete. A switch changes a room, and darkness seems defeated. But the older relationship between light and fear was slower. Light had to be made, it had to be protected. It could fade, it could fail. The body learned that darkness was not simply solved once and forever. It was held back for a time by effort, cooperation, and attention. That is why the fear of darkness may remain even in a world full of lamps. The body remembers the pattern more than the exact setting. It remembers that light is safety because it restores information. It remembers that company is safety because many senses cover more of the world than one. It remembers that the edge of light is a place to notice carefully. Fire gave humans a way to sleep inside the night, but not a way to forget what night had meant. The predator we evolved to fear may not have been one animal alone. It may have been the old possibility that, when light ends, another living thing may still be moving with better knowledge than ours. One body alone has only one circle of attention. It can face one direction clearly, listen from one place, and wake from only its own sleep. A group changes that. When humans slept near one another or settled close to a shared fire, the night became less empty in a practical way. There were more ears to hear movement, more eyes to open, more hands to respond, and more memory gathered in the same place. This does not mean early human groups were perfectly safe. No group can remove darkness from the world, but togetherness changed the terms of night. A sound that might frighten one isolated person could be checked by another. A child near the edge of camp could be noticed. A flame that weakened could be fed. A danger coming from one direction might be seen by someone facing that way. The long beginning of human life was not the story of one brave individual defeating darkness. It was often the quieter story of bodies surviving, because they did not have to meet the night alone. This is important because human beings are not only tool-making animals, we are also animals of shared attention. In daylight, shared attention helps people find food, watch children, read weather, follow tracks, and learn from one another. At night, it becomes a kind of shelter. Not a shelter made from stone or wood, but a shelter made from nearness. A person lying close to others is still vulnerable, yet the vulnerability is spread across many bodies. If one person sleeps deeply, another may be half awake. If one person misses a sound, another may turn their head. If fear rises in one body, the presence of others can help test whether the fear belongs to the world or only to uncertainty. This may be one reason darkness feels more frightening when we are alone. The body is not only missing light, it is missing the wider net of other human senses. Early humans likely used many forms of practical night safety, depending on place, season, weather, and culture. Some groups may have kept watch. Some may have slept in positions that made children easier to protect. Some may have chosen sleeping places that limited approach from several sides. We should not invent one universal pattern for all prehistoric life, because human groups lived in many environments. But the broad principle is well grounded. Social living can reduce risk. In darkness, that reduction matters because no single person can remain fully alert while resting. Sleep requires trust, and in the older human world, trust was often placed in the group, the fire, the shelter, and habits learned across generations. The body could lie down because safety did not depend on one body alone. This connection between group life and night may still be felt today. A dark room can feel different when another person is nearby. A strange noise can feel smaller when it is heard by more than one set of ears. A child often calms when a caregiver is close, not because the darkness has physically changed, but because the child's body receives evidence of protection. Adults may experience a quieter version of the same pattern. The presence of another human being can restore a little of the ancient net. It says, without words, that the body is not the only witness to the dark. In the deep human beginning, that may have been one of the most powerful protections available. Before walls became common, before lamps were constant, people had one another. The group did not erase predators, hidden ground, or uncertain sound. But it made the unknown less solitary. It turned fear from a private burden into a shared signal. And when the world beyond the light could not be fully read, shared attention may have been the nearest thing to a shelter the human body could carry. Darkness does not touch every body in the same way. In a group, some bodies are stronger, quicker, more experienced, and more able to respond. Others depend more deeply on the nearness of the group. Children, older adults, injured people, sick people, and those carrying or feeding infants would have faced the night with different levels of protection. This does not mean they were helpless or without value. In human life, the old and the young both matter. Older people can carry memory, knowledge of places, plants, animals, seasons, and dangers. Children carry the future of the group, but at night, when sight weakens and movement becomes less certain, the body that cannot respond quickly needs the attention of others more than usual. This is one reason the human group became more than a collection of individuals. It became a living shelter around its most vulnerable members. In the long beginning of human life, survival was not only a question of whether one adult could face danger. It was also a question of whether the group could keep children alive through many nights. whether injured bodies could rest long enough to heal, and whether older members could remain within the circle where their knowledge still helped everyone. Darkness made these relationships visible in a quiet way. A child wandering beyond firelight could be called back. An elder moving slowly over rough ground could be guided. A sleeping infant could be held close to warmth. A person who heard poorly or saw poorly could rely on someone nearby to notice what they missed. The group extended the senses of each individual. Many eyes, many ears, and many memories created a wider protection than one body could create alone. This helps explain why fear of darkness is not only fear for the self, it can also be fear for those who cannot protect themselves easily. A parent hearing a sound in the night may become alert not only because of personal danger, but because another small body is near. A group's caution may rise when its children are asleep, when someone is ill, or when the weather has made shelter weaker. These reactions are not abstract. They come from the practical fact that human beings evolved as dependent creatures. Even the strongest adult begins life unable to walk, unable to feed alone, unable to understand night, and unable to judge distance or danger. Human survival required care over long childhoods. That care did not stop at sunset. If anything, darkness made care more important. The night asked the group to protect bodies that could not yet read the world for themselves. This is why isolation in darkness can feel so sharp. Alone, a person has only one nervous system to rely on. In a group, the burden of uncertainty is shared. The vulnerable can sleep because others remain near. The tired can rest because not everyone must be fully alert at the same time. The inexperienced can learn by being kept inside the safer circle until knowledge grows. These patterns do not need to be romanticized. Human groups could be tense, unequal, or afraid, but the basic advantage of shared protection is real. It allowed a fragile species to carry infants, preserve elders, and survive injuries in environments where darkness made error more costly. Modern houses have changed the setting, but not the old emotional pattern completely. A child may still want a nearby voice in the dark. An older person may feel safer with a light left on. A sick person may feel the night lengthen when alone. These feelings are shaped by many modern causes, but they also echo an ancient human truth. Darkness was easier to endure when care was close. The group became a shelter because human life itself was never built for solitary survival in the night. Loneliness in darkness can feel stronger than loneliness in daylight, because the body loses two protections at once. It loses clear sight, and it loses the reassurance that another human presence is sharing the same uncertainty. A person alone in the dark has only one set of ears, one field of attention, one memory of the room or path, and one body that must decide whether a sound matters. This is why solitude can sharpen fear even when the place is familiar. The mind may know that nothing has changed, but the older body notices that no one else is there to confirm it. In the long beginning of human life, being alone after sunset was not just an emotional condition, it could be a practical weakness. One person could not watch all directions while resting. One person could not easily protect a fire, listen for movement, hold a child, and sleep at the same time. One person could be surprised more easily than a group. Darkness made this weakness clearer because it reduced the distance at which danger could be understood. The group gave the human body a wider boundary. Alone, that boundary shrank back toward the skin. This does not mean every ancient person feared solitude in the same way, or that humans could never move alone at night. Human behavior has always been flexible. Some people surely became skilled at traveling, watching, or working in low light. But the broad pattern remains. Our species was shaped by cooperation, and cooperation was especially valuable when information was poor. In darkness, another person is not only company, another person is another witness to the world. If both hear a sound, the sound can be judged together. If one person sees movement, the other can respond. If fear rises too quickly, the calm of another body can soften it. If one body sleeps, another may wake. This shared checking is one of the quiet foundations of human safety. Without it, the mind may circle around uncertainty alone. Modern solitude in darkness can awaken that old pattern. A hallway at night may be perfectly safe, but when a person walks alone through it, every small sound belongs only to that person's awareness. There is no nearby face to look toward, no quiet movement of another body to confirm normal life. no shared breath to show that the space is ordinary. The fear does not always come as terror. Often it is only a slight increase in attention, a wish for a light, a quick glance behind, or the feeling that the room has become too large. These small reactions can seem childish, but they are connected to something deeply human. Our ancestors did not survive the night only by being brave. They survived by staying linked. They built safety out of bodies near bodies, voices near voices, sleeping places chosen together, and attention spread across more than one mind. To be alone in darkness is to stand outside that old net for a moment. The modern world may make the moment harmless, but the body can still recognize the shape of it. This is why darkness often feels gentler when a person hears another voice, sees light under a door, or knows someone is sleeping nearby. The situation may not have changed much in physical terms, yet the nervous system receives a familiar signal. The night is being shared. The fear of darkness is therefore not only about predators or poor vision, it is also about separation. It remembers that early human life was not built around the isolated individual, but around the group that made night bearable. When companionship disappears, the old question returns more clearly. If something moves beyond what I can see, will I meet it alone? When the eyes cannot give a full picture, the brain does not simply leave the world blank. It tries to complete what is missing. This is not a defect. It is one of the ordinary ways perception works. Even in daylight, the mind is always joining fragments into a useful whole. It takes edges, shadows, distance, memory, and movement, then turns them into a stable world that can be acted upon. In darkness, however, the fragments are poorer. There is less colour, less detail, less depth, and fewer clear boundaries. The brain still tries to build a scene, but it must do so with weaker evidence. This is where the dark becomes powerful. It does not have to contain anything unusual. It only has to give the mind too little information, while the body still needs to know what is near. In the long beginning of human life, this kind of guessing was not philosophical, it was practical. Our ancestors had to move, rest, gather, carry children, return to shelter, and stay aware in places that did not stop being alive after sunset. A shape at the edge of a fire, a darker patch beside a tree, a low form near water, or a gap in stone could not always be ignored. The brain had to ask whether the shape mattered. When vision is poor, memory becomes more active. The mind compares what it sees now with what it expects should be there. If the outline matches a known branch, a stored pot, a sleeping companion, or a familiar doorway, fear may fade. But if the outline does not settle quickly, the mind keeps searching. It may test one possibility, then another. Is it an object? Is it movement? Is it a person? Is it an animal? This search can feel like fear, because the body is waiting for a usable answer. The darkness has not created a predator, but it has created the conditions in which a predator-shaped possibility can briefly appear. This tendency has a cautious logic. For a species that once lived among real hazards, it could be safer to notice a possible living presence too early than to overlook one too late. The brain is especially sensitive to agency, meaning signs that something else may be acting in the space around us. A shifting shadow or soft movement may be treated as important because living things can change direction, approach, hide, or react. A stone does not stalk, a branch does not choose, but in poor light, the difference between a branch and a crouched body may not be clear at first. The nervous system may therefore lean toward the possibility that the shape is alive until better evidence arrives. This does not mean the mind is foolish. It means the mind is built to protect a body that cannot afford perfect certainty in every moment. Modern darkness reveals the same process in quieter form. A coat on a chair can look like someone sitting. A hanging cloth can become a figure for a second. The open doorway of a bedroom can seem deeper than it is. Then the light comes on, and the object returns to its ordinary name. Nothing supernatural has happened. The brain simply worked with poor material and filled the gap in a way that gave safety priority. This is why fear can arrive before embarrassment, before explanation, before calm. The older human body responds to the unfinished picture first. Reason follows, corrects, and names the harmless object. Yet the first response has already shown its age. It belongs to nights when an unfinished picture could not always be dismissed. Darkness still frightens humans because it turns the world into a set of incomplete shapes, and the brain, faithful to its ancient duty, would rather ask too many questions than fail to ask the one that mattered. A vague shape in darkness is often more troubling than a clear danger in daylight because the mind cannot finish deciding what it is. A clear danger gives the body direction. It says move away, call out, lift a tool, stand still or seek help. A vague shape gives no such clean instruction. It remains between categories. It may be a tree, a coat, a stone, a shadow, a sleeping person, or an animal standing still. This in-between state is where fear grows quietly. The brain is not afraid only because it sees something. It is afraid because it cannot settle the meaning of what it sees. In the long beginning of human life, this mattered because the world after sunset still contained living bodies. A shape that did not move might still be alive. A shape that seemed far away might be closer than it looked. A shape beside water, grass, stone, or brush might belong to the land, or it might belong to an animal using the land as cover. The human brain had to make fast estimates with poor evidence, and when evidence was poor, the safer estimate often leaned toward caution. One reason blurred shapes feel alive is that living creatures are deeply important to perception. Humans are social animals, and our minds are tuned to notice faces, bodies, eyes, posture, direction, and movement. This tuning helps us read companions in daylight. It helps us know who is looking where, who is calm, who is alarmed, who is approaching, and who needs help. But in darkness, the same tuning can misfire. A vertical shadow may borrow the suggestion of a standing body. Two pale spots may feel like eyes. A hanging branch may seem like an arm. A low mound may become, for a moment, an animal crouched close to the ground. The mind is not inventing wildly from nothing. It is using old patterns to interpret unclear signs. Those patterns once helped humans detect other beings quickly. They could also create false alarms. But false alarms were part of the cost of a protective system that had to work before certainty arrived. This is why a shadow becomes less frightening when it is named. Once the brain can say branch, chair, stone, blanket, or doorway, the body usually relaxes. Naming is not magic. It is the return of category. The unclear shape has been placed back into the harmless world. Before that happens, the shape can feel like a presence, because it has not yet been excluded from the living world. The ancient body treats the unknown as open. It asks whether the shape has intention, whether it can move, whether it has noticed us, whether it is close enough to matter. These questions may pass too quickly for words, but the feeling remains. It is the feeling of being watched by something that may not be there. This feeling connects directly to the old human condition. Our ancestors were not only afraid of teeth and claws after they appeared, they had to care about the moment before appearance, when the land gave only a hint. A still form near the edge of light could be ignored, studied, or avoided. The cautious response did not require proof. It required the possibility that the form might be alive. Modern darkness still activates this ancient habit in softer settings. A bedroom corner, a hallway, or a window at night can turn ordinary objects into uncertain silhouettes. The thinking mind may know that the house is familiar, but the visual system receives reduced evidence, and the body briefly searches for agency. The fear is often corrected quickly, but its arrival shows how strongly the brain is built to prefer a living explanation when the signs are unclear. This does not make fear of darkness childish or foolish. It makes it a leftover from a world where missing a living presence could matter more than mistaking an object for one. A vague shape in the dark becomes frightening because it stands at the border between object and being, and the human brain, shaped by long nights of uncertainty, still listens carefully at that border. Fear of darkness is often fear of what has not yet taken shape. A clear threat can be frightening, but it gives the mind something definite to respond to. The unknown does something different. It keeps the body waiting. It leaves the brain between possibilities, and that space between possibilities can feel larger than any one object. In darkness, a sound may not become a source. A shape may not become a thing. A corner may not become empty enough to ignore. This is why the dark can trouble the mind even when nothing is visibly wrong. The fear is not always aimed at a real animal, a real person, or a real danger. It is aimed at uncertainty itself. For early humans, uncertainty was not an idea. It was a condition of the body moving through a world that could not always be read in time. The long beginning of human life happened in places where distance, shelter, water, weather, other people, and animals all mattered directly. When the eyes could not confirm the world, the brain had to treat the unknown with care. This care did not prove that danger existed. It only admitted that danger had not been ruled out. That difference is central to the fear of darkness. The body may react not because it knows something is there, but because it cannot know that nothing is there. In a daylight landscape, a person can look across open ground and decide that a place is clear enough. At night, the same ground may hold the same stones, plants, and paths, yet the decision becomes weaker. The missing information creates room for possibility. A hidden hole, a sleeping animal, a moving predator, a stranger, or simply a wrong step can all belong to the same darkened space until better evidence separates them. The brain, shaped to protect a living body, does not wait comfortably inside that uncertainty. It begins to prepare. The breath changes, the ears search, the body slows down. The mind imagines not because it wants to be deceived, but because imagination can test possible dangers before they become close. This is one of the oldest functions of thought, to look ahead into what is not yet visible, but in darkness that useful ability can become uneasy. The mind can produce more possibilities than the present moment can confirm. A harmless sound may invite several explanations. A shadow may carry several shapes. The unknown becomes crowded, not because the world is crowded, but because the brain is trying to protect the body from being surprised. This is why fear of darkness is different from fear of a known object. A known object has limits. The unknown has none until the senses give it boundaries. Early humans lived close to that truth. Their safety often depended on acting before full knowledge arrived. They could not demand perfect evidence from the night. They had to make careful choices while the world remained partly hidden. That ancient habit still appears in modern rooms. A person may know the house, the door, the hallway, and the furniture, yet the dark can loosen the certainty of those things. The familiar becomes slightly unfinished. The brain checks again. The body asks whether the space is still the same as before. Usually reason answers yes. The light comes on, the object is named, and the fear fades. But the brief fear has already revealed its source. It came from the gap between what exists and what can be verified. In that gap, the predator we evolved to fear may not be one creature alone. It may be the old possibility that something could exist beyond our knowledge, moving before we understand it, close before we are ready. Darkness frightens us, because it does not have to show us danger. It only has to take away enough certainty for the body to remember why uncertainty once mattered. When night entered human culture, it did not enter as a simple colour. It entered as a boundary. Across many societies, darkness became the time when ordinary rules felt thinner, when the edge of the village, the camp, the road, or the forest seemed less certain than it did by day. This does not mean every culture imagined night in the same way, or that all stories about darkness came from one ancient source. Human cultures are too varied for that. But it is reasonable to say that many traditions treated night as a time of caution, transition, hidden movement, spirits, ancestors, danger, dreams, or testing. These meanings did not appear from nowhere. They grew from the real experience of bodies living in environments where vision faded, work slowed, travel became harder, and the world beyond light became less readable. In the long beginning of human life, before modern lighting changed the surface of night, people did not encounter darkness as an idea. They encountered it as a condition around the body. The path could disappear. A familiar tree could become a shape. A sound could travel without a visible source. A child could move beyond the edge of sight. An animal could be near without being recognized. Over time, such practical experiences could become story. A repeated feeling becomes an image. A dangerous place becomes a warning tale. A sound beyond the fire becomes a sign that something may be outside the human circle. Culture gave language to what the body already knew. The night required care. Myths and stories often do not preserve literal events in a simple historical way. They transform experience into meaning. When people told stories about what moved at night, they were not necessarily recording a real predator, a real spirit, or a single incident. They may have been shaping a memory of uncertainty into a form that could be shared. A child who hears that one should not wander after dark receives more than entertainment. The story teaches timing, distance, obedience, and caution. An adult who remembers a tale about dangerous darkness may also remember the practical rule beneath it. Stay close. Keep fire alive. Do not cross unknown ground. Listen before moving. In this sense, culture became another shelter around the human body. It carried warnings beyond the life of one person. It allowed one generation to pass caution to the next, not only through rules but through images strong enough to be remembered. This connection between night and boundary appears in many forms because darkness naturally changes boundaries. The boundary between known and unknown becomes sharper. The boundary between waking and dreaming grows closer. The boundary between the living group and the unseen outside becomes easier to feel. The boundary between confidence and imagination becomes softer. Early humans and later communities did not need to invent these boundaries from nothing. They lived them each evening. When daylight left, the world did not vanish, but it became harder to confirm. That daily transformation could easily become part of ritual, belief, and story. Modern listeners should be careful not to treat these old stories as scientific evidence by themselves. A myth is not a fossil. A legend is not a direct measurement of prehistoric danger, but stories can show what people found emotionally and socially important. When darkness appears again and again as a place of caution, it tells us that human beings across time have felt the loss of light as more than inconvenience. They felt it as a change in the relationship between the body and the world. The fear of darkness, then, did not remain only in nerves and muscles. It entered memory, teaching, and culture, where the unseen night became a language for danger, mystery, and the fragile human need to stay near the light. Stories about darkness should be handled with care. They can tell us something important about human life, but they should not be treated as direct proof of exactly what happened in prehistory. A tale about night, forests, spirits, monsters, or forbidden paths may preserve a feeling, a warning, or a social rule, but it does not allow us to point to one animal, one event, or one ancient fear as the only source. Human cultures turn experience into image. They simplify, remember, reshape, and pass meaning across generations. This is why the darkness in old stories often feels crowded. It carries more than danger. It carries uncertainty, obedience, childhood, death, sleep, dreams, and the edge between the safe human circle and the larger world outside. In the long beginning of human life, these themes were not separate. Night touched all of them at once. When the sun went down, people became more dependent on fire, shelter, group attention, and memory. Children needed to stay close. Travel became more dangerous. A sound could not always be checked. A path could not always be trusted. Over time, practical caution could become a story strong enough to survive after the original setting had changed. A warning not to wander beyond the light might become a tale about something waiting outside. A dangerous riverbank might become a remembered place with a name. A predator seen once near camp might become part of a larger pattern of night fear. But the story is not the same thing as the event. It is a cultural vessel carrying caution through time. This distinction protects the truth of the subject. If we say that every night story is proof of ancient predators, we go too far. If we say that night stories are only fantasy with no connection to lived experience, we also miss something. The more balanced view is that stories often reflect the conditions humans had to manage. Darkness reduced vision. It increased dependence on others. It made boundaries feel meaningful. It gave imagination more room because the senses had less evidence. A culture could take those bodily facts and turn them into figures, rules, rituals, and warnings. The result might be a ghost story, a tale of dangerous woods, a rule about staying indoors, or a belief that night belongs partly to beings humans should not disturb. These forms differ widely, but they often rest on the same human problem: how to live carefully when the world cannot be fully seen. This is why stories can preserve the shape of fear without preserving a literal record. The shape is the pattern beneath the image. There is a safe place and an unsafe edge. There is light and what lies beyond light. There is the known group and the unseen outside. There is the child who must not wander, the traveller who must wait for morning, the voice that calls from the dark, the path that looks different after sunset. These patterns are not scientific data, but they are not meaningless. They show how deeply darkness entered human memory. The first humans did not write books about the nervous system. They did not explain missing visual information in modern terms, but through repeated living, later generations learned that night required respect. Culture gave that respect a form that could be taught before a child understood risk. In modern life, we may hear such stories and think they belong only to imagination. Yet imagination itself is part of how humans prepare for what is not present. Around ancient fires, in villages, in houses, and in bedtime warnings, darkness became a teaching space. It reminded people that the unseen should not be treated as empty too quickly, because for much of human history, the unseen was simply the part of the world that had not yet declared what it was. Collective memory does not hold the past the way stone holds a footprint. It changes as people speak, forget, repeat, and teach. Yet it can still carry the emotional shape of older experience. Darkness entered human memory in this way. It became more than a nightly condition. It became a shared feeling about the edge of safety, the limit of sight, and the need to remain close when the world lost detail. A group that lived through many nights did not need to remember each sound or each danger separately. It could preserve a simpler lesson. After sunset, distance becomes uncertain, movement should slow, and the unseen should be respected. In the long beginning of human life, this kind of memory was not written down. It lived in habits, warnings, sleeping places, fires kept alive, children called back from the dark, and stories told when the day's work had ended. What mattered was not exact description, but guidance. A remembered fear could become a practical rule. A practical rule could become a tale. A tale could carry the rule forward after the people who first learnt it were gone. This is how the ancient feeling of night may have travelled across generations without needing a single unchanged story. It moved through the body and the group together. Children learned where not to go by being held near. They learned the sound of adults lowering their voices after dark. They learned that the edge of light was not the same as the centre of light. They learned that a path known by day might be avoided by night. These lessons did not require a lecture about predators or vision. They were absorbed as atmosphere, rhythm, and caution. Later, as societies grew more complex, night took on many symbolic meanings. It could belong to spirits, ancestors, dreams, danger, secrecy, rest, or transformation. But beneath those meanings, one older pattern remained. Darkness marked a place where ordinary certainty weakened. The human mind is good at turning repeated conditions into symbols. Because night returned every day, it became one of the strongest symbols available. It was predictable, yet never fully controlled. It ended, yet always came back. It hid things, but also made sleep possible. It was not only feared, it was also endured, watched, used, and given meaning. That balance matters. If we describe darkness only as terror, we make the past too simple. Early humans and later communities also knew the calm of night, the comfort of fire, the safety of familiar voices, and the slow return of dawn. But calm did not erase caution. It lived beside it. A culture could sing under the stars and still warn a child not to walk alone beyond the last light. Modern people inherit many different cultural images of night, and not all of them are frightening. Some are peaceful, sacred, beautiful, or restful. Still, the old unease remains easy to understand. When the lights go out, the body meets a condition much older than modern culture. The room becomes less readable. The doorway becomes darker than the wall. The small sound becomes harder to name. At that moment, personal memory, cultural memory, and evolutionary caution can overlap. A person may not believe any old story, yet the feeling those stories shaped can still rise. This does not mean the past is trapped inside us unchanged. It means human beings are layered. We live with electric light, but also with nervous systems shaped before it. We sleep in buildings, but also with imaginations trained by generations of stories. darkness still feels meaningful because it has been written into human life in more than one language: body, group, memory, and culture. It remains a quiet reminder that the first human shelters were not only made of stone, wood, or fire, but also of shared attention passed from one generation to the next. Electric light feels ordinary now because modern life has placed it everywhere. A person can wake in the night, touch a switch, and return the room to visibility in a second. Streets, windows, cars, phones, signs, and buildings keep parts of the world bright long after sunset. This makes darkness seem like a small inconvenience, something chosen, controlled, or corrected. But in the full length of human history, steady artificial light is extremely recent. For almost all of our species past, the night arrived with a force that could not be dismissed so easily. Fire, oil lamps, candles, and moonlight helped, but they did not fill the world the way modern lighting can. They flickered, faded, required fuel, and left large areas beyond their reach. The human body was shaped long before light became effortless. This is why the fear of darkness did not vanish simply because cities began to glow. The nervous system is older than the switch on the wall. In the long beginning of human life, our ancestors learned the rhythm of day and night as a natural boundary. Daylight opened distance. It made paths, faces, tracks, water, tools, and danger easier to read. Night narrowed those things. It asked for slower movement, closer bodies, stronger memory, and careful listening. This rhythm repeated for generation after generation. It did not only shape habits, it shaped expectations inside the body. When light falls, attention changes. When a space cannot be seen clearly, the body asks for more evidence. When evidence is missing, caution rises. Modern lighting changed the environment far faster than biology could be remade. A world can become bright in a few centuries of technology, but the body does not rewrite all its older responses in the same moment. The result is a strange mismatch. We live in rooms safer than most ancient sleeping places, yet we can still feel the old narrowing when the light disappears. This does not mean the modern fear is always useful. Often it is not. A hallway in a house is not a grassland edge. A bedroom corner is not a cave mouth. A shadow on a curtain is usually nothing more than fabric and streetlight. But the body does not begin with cultural knowledge or building design. It begins with sensory information. If the eyes lose detail, the older system responds to that loss first. Reason may arrive quickly and correct the feeling, but the first movement of attention has already happened. This is why modern light can protect us without fully calming the ancient pattern beneath it. The room may be new, but the condition is old. Reduced sight, uncertain shape, sound without source, distance without clear boundary. Electric light also changed social life. In earlier worlds, darkness gathered people towards shared sources of light. Fire, lamps, and hearths created centers where bodies stayed close. Modern light spreads individuals into separate rooms, separate screens, separate schedules. This can make night feel less communal, even while it is safer. The body may be surrounded by technology and still lack the older comfort of shared attention. A glowing screen is not the same as another person listening beside us. A lit ceiling is not the same as a group keeping watch around a fire. So the modern world gives us more light, but not always the same form of reassurance. This helps explain why darkness still has emotional weight. It is not because humans failed to become modern, it is because modern light is a very thin layer placed over a very old body. The switch changes the room. It does not erase the long memory of nights when light was rare, fragile, and precious, and when the return of darkness still asked the human body to listen before it trusted. A modern room can be safer than almost any sleeping place in the older human world, yet the nervous system does not begin by reading safety from statistics. It begins with light, sound, distance, and the feeling of what can or cannot be checked. A bedroom may have walls, a locked door, smooth floors, glass windows, and no wild animal anywhere nearby. The thinking mind may know all of this, but when the lights go out, the first information available to the body becomes poorer. The corners lose detail. The doorway becomes a darker shape. A small sound travels without a visible source. The body does not ask first whether the house was built in a safe neighborhood, or whether the floor was clear an hour ago. It asks a much older question. Can I read the space around me well enough to relax? This question comes from the long beginning of human life, when safety was not guaranteed by architecture, but had to be made again each night through fire, nearness, shelter, memory, and attention. Modern rooms solve many of the old dangers, but they do not always change the first language the body uses to judge the dark. The walls protect more than the senses can immediately prove. The lock works even when the eyes cannot see it. The floor remains flat even when its edges fade. But the body still responds to the evidence that is present in the moment, and in darkness that evidence has been reduced. This is why a person can feel uneasy while also knowing there is no real threat. Two systems are working at different speeds. Reason understands the modern room. The older alert system responds to the loss of visual certainty. For a brief moment, the body treats the safe room as a space that needs checking. It may turn the head toward a sound, hold the breath, listen for another signal, or search for the familiar outline of furniture. This reaction does not mean the body is wrong in a simple way. It means it was shaped by a world where danger could not always be disproved quickly. In that older world, the safest response to missing information was often not calm dismissal but careful attention. Modern safety also changes the meaning of fear by making it feel unnecessary. If a person stands under the open sky in a wild landscape at night, unease may seem understandable. If the same feeling appears inside a sealed room, it can feel embarrassing or irrational. But the nervous system is not responding to the full legal and physical structure of modern safety. It is responding to sensory conditions that resemble older ones: less sight, uncertain shapes, isolated sound, and the sudden awareness of being a body in space. This resemblance is enough to wake the older pattern, even when the real risk is very low. The body uses resemblance because, across deep time, resemblance was often all it had. A shadow that looked like a crouched animal could not be safely ignored until it was known. A sound that resembled movement could not always wait for proof. The modern room borrows the shape of that ancient uncertainty whenever darkness removes detail. The fear may fade quickly when the light returns, because information returns. The chair becomes a chair. The coat becomes a coat. The doorway becomes only a doorway. Yet the small fear before that correction shows how thin the surface of modern comfort can be over older habits. We are not living in the same danger, but we are still living in bodies that learn to treat darkness as a condition requiring confirmation. Knowing that a room is safe does not always make the body feel safe, because knowledge and sensation do not arrive in the same way. Knowledge can say the door is locked, the walls are solid, the window is closed, and the floor is clear. Sensation can say the room has lost its edges, the doorway is dark, the far corner is unfinished, and a small sound has no visible source. These two messages can exist together. A modern person may understand with complete reason that nothing dangerous is present, yet still feel the quiet tightening that comes when light disappears. This is not a failure of intelligence. It is a sign that the human nervous system was shaped in a world where safety had to be confirmed through the senses, not only through belief. In the long beginning of human life, our ancestors could not depend on walls, locks, glass, electricity, or sealed rooms. They depended on what could be seen, heard, remembered, and shared with others. Darkness reduced that evidence. It did not always bring danger, but it made danger harder to rule out. That ancient problem can still appear in a modern bedroom, even when the real conditions have changed. The body notices the loss of detail before the mind finishes explaining the safety of the room. This is why darkness can create a strange division inside a person. One part knows the space, another part checks it again. The familiar chair becomes a shape. The closet becomes a darker rectangle. The hallway outside the door becomes a place without enough information. The body may listen more closely, not because it believes something is there, but because it cannot verify emptiness as easily as it could in daylight. This distinction is important. Fear in a safe room is often not fear of a known threat. It is the old response to unverified space. For early humans, unverified space mattered. A hidden animal, a hidden drop, a hidden branch, a hidden stranger, or even the quiet movement of a companion could change the meaning of the night. The body learned to treat the unseen as unfinished until more evidence arrived. In modern life, we still carry that rule, even when it is often unnecessary. A dark room may have no predator, no open ground, No riverbank, no cave mouth, and no sleeping group to protect. But it still gives the nervous system one of the oldest signals. Vision has weakened. Once that signal appears, the body may ask for light, company, or confirmation. A lamp restores not only brightness, but certainty. Another voice restores not only comfort, but shared attention. A familiar sound, once named, returns the room to ordinary life. This is why people can feel calmer after checking, even when they already knew nothing was wrong. Checking gives the senses what reason alone could not provide in that first moment. It turns the unknown back into the known. The fear of darkness in modern safety is therefore a mismatch, but not a meaningless one. The environment has changed faster than the body's first responses. Human beings built rooms that protect us from many old dangers, but those rooms are interpreted by eyes, ears, skin, memory, and attention that come from a much longer history. We sleep under roofs, but the sleeping body still belongs to a species that once needed others nearby, light within reach, and time to listen before trusting the dark. The safe room does not cancel that inheritance. It only gives the thinking mind better reasons to calm it. And so the unease may rise for a moment, then fade, leaving behind a quiet reminder that human safety is very new, while the body's respect for darkness is very old. The predator in modern darkness is not usually an animal with teeth at the edge of the fire. In many places today, the large hunters that once shared human landscapes are distant, rare, controlled, or absent from ordinary life. Most people who feel uneasy in a dark hallway are not responding to a real lion, hyena, wolf, bear, or crocodile. The old danger has changed, yet the pattern remains, because the body is not only shaped by what is present now, it is also shaped by the kinds of situations that once required care. Darkness still creates one of those situations. It reduces visual certainty, it makes distance harder to judge, it lets sound arrive without a clear source, it makes ordinary objects lose their names for a moment. So even when the actual predator is gone, the condition that once gave predators power has not fully disappeared. The long beginning of human life was lived in environments where other animals mattered. Humans learn to survive not by being stronger than every creature, but by using sight, group attention, tools, fire, memory, and timing. These advantages depended on information. When information weakened, the body had to become more cautious. Over generations, fear became linked not only to a specific animal, but to the setting in which hidden danger could appear. That setting was the dark. This helps explain why modern fear may feel vague. Man, humber, man. A person may not imagine one clear creature waiting nearby. Instead, there is a pressure, a hesitation, a sense that the unseen space has become important. The mind may not say predator, but the body still understands the old structure. Something could be near before I know it. In ancient landscapes, that structure could involve real animals. In modern rooms, it may involve no real danger at all. Yet the nervous system reacts to the loss of confirmation before it reacts to modern facts. The predator became less visible because the world changed. Humans built houses, doors, cities, roads, lamps, fences, and laws. We pushed many wild dangers farther away from sleeping places. We learned to illuminate streets and close rooms against the outside. But the brain did not remove every old rule. It did not need to. A rule that once said, "Be careful when you cannot see well," may still be activated, even when the place is safer than any ancient camp. The result is not a perfect match between fear and reality. It is a fossil of attention, still moving inside the living body. This fossil does not point to one single beast. It points to a relationship between body and world. When the body cannot confirm what surrounds it, it prepares for the possibility that something else may have better knowledge of the space than we do. That is the deeper meaning behind the predator we evolved to fear. The predator may have once been an animal at the edge of sight, but over time, the shape of that danger became wider. It became the hidden mover, the unseen presence, the thing that might notice us before we notice it. Modern life has removed much of the original danger, but it has not removed the feeling of being at a disadvantage when light fails. This is why the fear can survive without its old object. It no longer needs a real hunter outside the door. It only needs darkness to recreate the ancient imbalance. Our eyes weakened, our certainty reduced, and the unseen world briefly larger than the known one. Darkness still symbolizes loss of control, because it changes how much of the world the body can hold at once. In daylight, a person can look across a room, a path, a street, or a field and feel that space has been measured. The eyes can place the door, the ground, the wall, the faces, the moving bodies, and the safe direction to turn. This creates a sense of command. Even when the command is limited, the world feels arranged before us. Darkness quietly removes that arrangement. It does not have to add any new danger. It only has to take away the evidence that lets the body feel oriented. The same room becomes less certain. The same path becomes slower. The same doorway becomes a darker opening. The body may still know where everything is, but it cannot prove it as easily through the senses. This is why fear of darkness can remain after the old predator has faded from daily life. The fear attaches to the loss of orientation itself. In the long beginning of human life, orientation was not a comfort. It was survival. To know where the group rested, where the fire burned, where the water lay, where the ground dropped, where shelter ended, and where sound came from, could change what happened to a living body. Humans were not built with armored skin or night-perfect eyes. They survived by reading space well enough to act before danger came too close. Darkness weakened that reading. It made the body depend on memory, touch, hearing, and caution. These senses are useful, but they do not give the same calm reach as daylight vision. A sound may tell us that something moved, but not always where it moved from. A memory may tell us where the stone was, but not whether something has shifted since we last saw it. Touch can confirm the ground, but only after the foot has already arrived. So darkness turns space into a series of questions. Where am I exactly? What is near me? What has changed? What can I not check? These questions are simple, but they touch very old human needs. Control is not only power over the world, it is the ability to predict what the next step will meet. When prediction weakens, the body becomes alert. This is why a dark hallway can feel longer than the same hallway in light. The body has not lost the hallway, but it has lost easy confirmation. A bedroom can feel larger because the edges are hidden. A forest path can feel deeper because the end cannot be seen. A quiet house can feel occupied because every small sound stands out against the missing picture. None of this requires a real threat. It requires only a gap between what the mind expects and what the senses can verify. In that gap, the old pattern returns. When control is reduced, slow down and listen. Modern culture often uses darkness as a symbol for fear, secrecy, ignorance, or danger, because the bodily experience already points in that direction. Darkness means not fully knowing. Not fully knowing means not fully directing. For early humans, that could involve predators. For modern humans, it may involve a different kind of unease, the sense that the world has become less available to us. The predator in the title can therefore be understood as a pattern of disadvantage. It is the moment when something else, whether an animal, an accident, or simple uncertainty, may have more power because we have less information. This is why darkness still feels like more than a colour. It is a condition where the human body remembers that safety once depended on light, direction, and the ability to know the space before stepping into it. The predator in the title does not need to be understood as one animal alone. It can also be understood as a pattern that followed humans across deep time. That pattern begins when light falls, vision weakens, and the body no longer knows whether it is the watcher or the watched. In the older human world, this pattern could involve real predators. A large animal might move beyond the edge of firelight. A patient hunter might wait near water. A hidden body might hear, smell, or notice a human before the human noticed it. But over time, the meaning became broader than any single creature. The predator became the unseen advantage itself, the possibility that something else could know the dark better than we do. This is why fear of darkness can survive even when no real predator is near. The body is responding to an ancient imbalance. In daylight, humans often recover their strengths. We can see across distance. We can read the ground. We can notice faces, gestures, tracks, tools, and paths. We can coordinate with others before danger comes close. In darkness, those strengths are reduced. The world does not have to become hostile. It only has to become less readable. For early humans and earlier relatives, that loss of readability mattered because the body was never protected by strength alone. It was protected by warning, timing, memory, and the group. A predator that moved silently did not have to be stronger than all human intelligence. It only had to arrive before intelligence had enough time to organize a response. That is the old shape behind the fear, not the animal itself, but the late discovery of the animal. The same shape remains today in softer form. A person walking through a dark room may not imagine claws or teeth, yet the body may still feel a small hesitation. The reason is not that the room has become ancient. The reason is that the condition has become familiar to an older layer of the nervous system. Sight has weakened, space has become unfinished, sound has become harder to place. The mind cannot easily prove that the unseen is empty. In that moment, the predator is no longer a creature with a fixed body. It is a possibility without a clear outline. It is the hidden mover, the unverified presence, the thing that could be there before we know how to name it. This interpretation keeps the title grounded. It does not claim that humans are secretly haunted by one prehistoric beast, or that every fear in the dark comes from a single evolutionary event. Human fear is shaped by many things: childhood, culture, memory, experience, sleep, stress, imagination, and the ordinary limits of perception. But beneath those layers there is a very old problem. Our species evolved in environments where darkness reduced information while life around us continued. Some of that life could harm us. Some of it could not. The difficulty was knowing the difference soon enough. So the predator we evolved to fear may be partly literal and partly structural. It was once the animal that moved beyond our vision. It was also the situation that gave hidden things more power. Modern light, buildings, and knowledge have changed the danger, but they have not erased the structure. When darkness returns, the body still meets the old arrangement. Less certainty for us, more room for what we cannot see. That is why the fear can feel so deep and yet so vague. It points backward to a time when survival depended on noticing before being noticed, and it points inward to a body that still treats the unseen as something worth respecting. Fear of darkness teaches us something quiet about the human place in nature. It reminds us that our species did not begin as an untouchable power standing above the living world. We began as bodies that needed light, nearness, memory, and care. We were intelligent, but intelligence did not remove softness from the skin or weakness from the eyes at night. We could make tools, but tools had to be found, held, and used in time. We could speak, but voices needed listeners. We could remember dangerous places, but memory became less useful when darkness changed the shape of those places. The fear that remains in us is therefore not only a fear of night, it is a reminder of human vulnerability at the beginning of our story. The body that grows uneasy in darkness is carrying a trace of a time when survival depended on reading the world before the world came too close. In daylight, human beings could become confident. We could see the ground, follow tracks, recognize faces, carry children, gather food, and notice movement at a distance. At night, confidence had to become more humble. The world continued, but the human map of it faded. This fading did not make people weak in a moral sense. It made them realistic. A fragile body that admits uncertainty can move more carefully than a proud body that ignores it. In this way, fear of darkness may preserve one of the oldest lessons of human life. We survived not because we were always fearless, but because we learned when to be cautious. That caution helped us stay near others, protect children, keep fire alive, wait for morning, and respect the limits of what we could know. The modern world often encourages us to think of humans as controllers of nature. We light cities, close doors, build walls, and carry small screens that glow in the hand. Yet the dark can still return us to an older truth. We are animals with memory. We are animals with imagination. We are animals who need one another when certainty becomes thin. A person in a safe room may feel only a small unease when the light goes out, but that small unease belongs to a very long history. It reaches back to nights before houses, before switches, before the idea that darkness could be removed instantly. It belongs to human beings who rested in groups, watched the edge of firelight, listened to the land, and understood that the unseen should not be dismissed too quickly. There is humility in this. Fear of darkness shows that human greatness did not come from escaping vulnerability completely. It came from responding to vulnerability with cooperation, attention, invention, and care. We made light because darkness mattered. We made shelters because bodies needed protection. We made stories because children needed warnings and comfort. We stayed close because no single body could watch the whole night alone. The fear still inside us is not a clean scientific answer to every feeling in the dark. It is a layered inheritance, shaped by biology, experience, culture, and the old conditions of perception. But it points towards something deeply human. We were never only thinkers. We were living bodies inside a living world. Darkness still teaches that lesson because it removes the illusion of complete control. It asks us to notice how much of safety depends on information, how much of courage depends on companionship, and how much of human history was made by beings who were aware of their own limits. To be afraid of the dark is not simply to be primitive. It is to carry a memory of a world where humility helped the living endure until dawn. Light, community, memory, and imagination did not make humans separate from darkness. They gave humans ways to pass through it. This is an important difference. A species does not need to erase every danger in order to live well. It needs enough understanding, enough cooperation, and enough repeated care to make survival possible across many nights. For early humans, light was one answer. Fire brought warmth, visibility, and a center where the group could gather. Later, lamps, hearths, candles, and finally electric light widened that answer. But light was never only brightness. It was information returned to the body. It let the eyes find the ground again. It let faces become readable again. It let hands work, children be seen, and the edge of shelter be watched. In this sense, every human light is also a quiet reply to the old uncertainty of night. Community was another answer. One person alone could not hear everything, guard every direction, tend every flame, and sleep safely at the same time. A group could share the burden. It could make fear less private. It could turn a sound into something checked by several minds instead of one anxious body. In the long beginning of human life, this mattered as much as any tool. Human safety was not only held in stone, bone, wood, or fire. It was held in nearness. It was held in the sleeping circle, the watching adult, the child kept within reach, the elder whose memory named dangerous places, and the companion whose calm breathing told others that the night was still ordinary. Darkness became easier to endure because human beings learned to meet it together. Memory also helped. A group that survived many nights could remember where the ground dropped, where animals came to drink, where wind weakened the fire, where shelter held warmth, and where the path became unsafe after sunset. These memories did not remove fear. They gave fear direction. Instead of a vague unease filling the whole dark, people could learn which places required more care, which sounds were familiar, and which habits made rest safer. This is one of the gentlest forms of human intelligence. Not command over nature, but attention repeated until it becomes knowledge. The body felt caution. The group shaped caution into practice. Practice became habit. Habit became culture. Imagination then carried these lessons beyond the immediate night. It allowed humans to picture what might be unseen, to warn children before danger appeared, to tell stories that made caution memorable, and to give shape to uncertainty. Imagination can frighten us, especially in darkness, but it is also one of the ways humans prepare for what is not yet visible. Around fires, beneath roofs, and later beside lamps, people use story to hold the night at a distance. Some stories were fearful, some were comforting, some gave rules, some gave meaning. All of them show that humans did not simply suffer the dark. They answered it with symbols, voices, and shared memory. This is why the fear of darkness should not be seen only as something to overcome. It also shows what humans became in response to vulnerability. We became makers of light, keepers of one another, carriers of memory, and tellers of careful stories. The dark remained larger than any one body, but the human answer grew larger too. It grew from flame to shelter, from warning to teaching, from fear to attention, from attention to care. And even now, when a small light in a room feels comforting, it is connected to that long history of living bodies learning how to rest while the unknown waited beyond the glow. If darkness no longer holds the same dangers it once held, then the fear that remains may seem like a question without a purpose. The modern night is filled with walls, locks, glass, lamps, roads, and voices carried through small devices. In many homes, the largest dangers that shaped older human caution are absent. No animal waits beyond the bed. No open ground has to be crossed to reach safety. No child has to sleep at the edge of a fire while the dark land continues around the group. Yet when the light is gone, the body may still become attentive. It may listen to the hallway, notice the doorway, measure the room again, and ask for a small sign that the world is still what it was a moment before. This is the quiet mystery at the center of the fear. The danger has changed, but the body still recognizes the condition. Our species began with that condition, long before it began with modern safety. We were born from a deep history in which night reduced information while life continued outside the edge of sight. To live through that history, humans did not need perfect fear, and they did not need perfect calm. They needed enough caution to remain connected to the group, enough curiosity to understand the world, enough imagination to prepare for what might come, and enough trust to sleep when sleep was necessary. The fear of darkness is a trace of that balance. It is not proof that something waits in every shadow. It is not a command to distrust the night. It is a reminder that the human body was shaped in a world where certainty was never complete. This reminder can be useful if we hear it carefully. It shows that vulnerability is not the opposite of wisdom. Sometimes vulnerability is what teaches a species to make light, to build shelter, to hold children close, to listen to elders, to tell careful stories, and to stay near one another when the world becomes difficult to read. The fear that once helped humans slow down may now invite a different kind of understanding. It can help us see ourselves not as creatures who conquered darkness completely, but as creatures who learn to live with limits. We still depend on light because we still depend on information. We still feel calmer with company because our safety was never only individual. We still name shadows because the mind wants the unknown to become part of the known world. And when the unknown cannot be named, the body waits. It waits the way older bodies may have waited near firelight, beneath trees, in caves, or under open sky. The night today can also be gentle. It can quiet the day, slow the mind, and remind us that not every unanswered thing is an enemy. The same darkness that once required caution also allowed rest, dreams, memory, and the soft return of dawn. To understand fear of the dark honestly is not to turn night into horror, and not to dismiss fear as foolish. It is to see the human being as a layered creature, modern in its rooms, ancient in its senses, rational in its explanations, and still bodily in its first response to uncertainty. Perhaps that is why darkness remains so powerful. It speaks to the oldest border in human life, the border between what we can know and what we must wait to understand. And if the night is safer now than it once was, why does the body still listen to it as if some unfinished memory is moving beyond the light?